Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to dive into an incredibly universal and, let's be honest, pretty uncomfortable experience. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're having a perfectly fine Tuesday, minding your own business. You open up your phone, scroll through someone else's highlight reel, and suddenly, you feel like you are completely falling behind in life. And there it is. A peer from college just posted about this massive promotion. Or maybe it's a perfectly curated photo of a dream vacation, the keys to a brand new home, or some impossibly flawless fitness transformation. We all know that sinking feeling right in the pit of our stomach. It's the classic highlight reel trap. Now, logically, your brain knows that people only post their absolute best moments online, right? Whether it's about careers, relationships, money, or education. But logic goes out the window, and we can't help but feel this sudden wave of inadequacy. We look at their perfectly filtered reality, we look back at our own messy, unfiltered lives, and we just judge ourselves so harshly. So, why on earth does someone else's success feel like our own personal failure? I mean, it seems so completely irrational, right? Why can't we just be happy for them without making it about us? Well, to figure this out, we have to recognize that this is actually a deeply ingrained biological mechanism. This isn't a personal flaw. You aren't just being petty or jealous. Your brain is quite literally hardwired to do this.
So let's unpack the actual science of social comparison.
Way back in 1954, a psychologist named Leon Festinger proposed what he called social comparison theory. And Festinger hit the nail on the head regarding human nature. We have this intense, burning drive to evaluate our standing in life. We desperately want to know if our opinions are correct and if our abilities are up to par. But here's the catch. For most things in life, there's no objective benchmark. There isn't some giant universal scoreboard in the sky that tells you exactly how good of a parent you are or how successful your career really is. So, because we lack those objective metrics, we naturally use other people as our yardsticks. We look around just to figure out where we stand. And this makes perfect sense when you look at it through the lens of evolution. We are equipped with what researchers call a social self-preservation system. Think about our ancestors for a second. In ancient tribal communities, your social rank and whether you were accepted literally dictated if you got access to food, protection, and mates. Being outperformed by a peer was a real physical threat to your survival. If your brain detected a drop in your status, it would trigger these acute, awful emotions like envy, shame, or humiliation. Your brain's emotional regulation system used those feelings as evolutionary alarm bells. It was saying, hey, adjust your behavior so you fit back into the group hierarchy. So, historically, envy was actually a survival tool. Crazy, right? Now, fast forward a bit to how this plays out today through upward and downward spirals. As we go about our day, we're constantly bouncing between two directions, upward and downward comparisons. Downward comparison is when you look at folks who seem less fortunate or less successful than you. And sure, this can give you a temporary salve for low self-esteem, a quick little ego boost, sometimes called schadenfreude. But let's be real, it rarely leads to lasting happiness. On the flip side, upward comparison is when we look at those who have exactly what we want. And this is where things get super tricky. Upward comparison has two totally different outcomes. It can either crush us with feelings of inadequacy and shame, or, surprisingly, it can fill us with encouragement and hope. So what actually determines which one we experience? Here is the secret sauce. It comes down to something researchers call effort performance expectancy, or EP expectancy for short. This dictates whether your upward comparison turns into toxic envy or hopeful inspiration. If you have high EP expectancy, you believe that if you put in the effort, you can actually improve your own performance. So when you see a super successful colleague, you view them as inspiration. But if you have low EP expectancy, you believe there's this fixed, insurmountable gap between you and that person. You think, man, no matter how hard I try, I will never be like them. In that state, upward comparison is just a painful reminder of your perceived inferiority. It all hinges on your belief in your own capacity for growth. But here's where things go completely off the rails for us. The social media chasm. The problem today is scale. For thousands of years, our ancestral reality was incredibly small. You only compared yourself to your immediate neighbors and coworkers. You mostly lived around people with similar backgrounds, incomes, and lifestyles, so the gap between you and them was pretty narrow. But today, the digital reality has shattered that. We are now exposed to the entire world's curated best. We aren't just comparing ourselves to the baker down the street anymore. We are comparing ourselves to billionaires, supermodels, and literally thousands of influencers every single day. What used to be a small, manageable gap has become a yawning chasm of perceived differences that just feel completely unattainable. And our poor evolutionary brains just cannot keep up with this. The chronic impact of this digital comparison is severe because our brains can't easily separate our messy everyday reality from an influencer's highly edited fiction. Our reward systems get completely hijacked. Instead of getting natural dopamine hits from our own lives, we experience a constant drain on our emotional battery. That social self-preservation system we talked about, it is stuck in overdrive. It is constantly firing off those alarm bells of envy and shame, and research shows this leads to a cumulative process of self-devaluation. It slowly, quietly erodes our self-esteem and our belief in our own social worth over time. It is literally an exhausting psychological marathon.
Okay, so what do we do about it? We need a motivation shift.
The good news is we can actively interrupt this toxic cycle. You just have to walk through a few deliberate cognitive steps the very moment you catch yourself doing it. First up, give yourself a break. Accept it. Stop judging yourself for comparing. As we've learned, it's a normal human reflex. Second, fiercely remind yourself that you are comparing your messy inside to someone else's highly curated outside. You literally have no idea if they're actually miserable behind that smiling photo. Third, put the comparison into context. Okay, maybe they excel in one specific area, but you have incredible strengths in totally different areas. And finally, intentionally shift your focus away from them and right back onto your own personal goals and who you want to become. When we approach upward comparison armed with high self-esteem and a growth mindset, that high EP expectancy we talked about earlier, we totally flip the script. The success of others transforms from a weapon we use to beat ourselves up into a really powerful blueprint for our own lives. We can look at someone's achievement and think, hey, if they can be that way, so can I. We start asking, how did they do that? Instead of wallowing in, why can't I have that? We use their success as fuel to improve our own knowledge and skills. Which brings us to the most important part, appreciating your own unique timeline. To make this stick, you need some daily actionable habits. The absolute most immediate fix? Limit your social media consumption. Just cut back. It simply reduces the amount of toxic data points your brain has to process every day. Next, instead of fixating on where you feel lesser, double down on your unique strengths and the areas where you are more in your own incredible ways. Embrace the fact that you are an imperfect human being, and you know what? That is perfectly fine. And perhaps most importantly, remind yourself daily that everyone unfolds on a completely different timeline. Life is not a race on a single track.
I want to leave you with this final thought. It's a powerful reframe, and I really want you to carry this with you the very next time you open your phone and feel that old familiar sting of comparison creeping in. What if someone else's success wasn't evidence that you're behind, but proof that progress is possible? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope this helps you navigate your digital world with a little more grace, a lot more inspiration, and a renewed appreciation for your own unique journey. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll catch you next time.